Welcome back to another episode of the Orange Crush podcast presented by Newton Scott and Associates and Chick-fil-A. We'll have more on those in a bit here. And I'm rejoined by Mr. David Hood, who's back from his 9-day vacation in Colorado. And David, you picked quite the day to come back and return because we have some breaking news this morning and a little bit of breaking news this afternoon on two different fronts from the football scene. But we're going to quickly touch on the dismissal of Marquez Henderson, the BHP product that committed to Clemson as part of the 2025 class. Unfortunately, things just didn't work out, David. More that you are able to provide. Feel like we just want to briefly touch on this before we move to Dre Quinn's commitment.
Yeah, so when I was in Colorado, we went over several 4x4 roads, out there in the high country, some bumpy roads, a lot of rocks. That kind of describes the journey of Marquez Henderson at Clemson, some bumpy roads. And, had some BHP people tell me last year when I went to see BHP play a couple of times, hey, there may be an adjustment period for him. There may be a period where, they're going to really have to dial him in. But you feel like if anybody can do it, if anybody can be that disciplinarian, it'd be Dabo Swinney, right? And then he gets there and you immediately start, look, just lots of rumors. Not going to bash the kid here. It's over. But yes, sounds like there were some adjustments that needed to be made. They weren't made. I think, people that can go back to the video, I asked Dabo after one of the scrimmages, can you tell me about Quest? And he's like, hey, he's just not out there. Battling a hamstring injury. We saw him in a different colored jersey, that kind of indicated that out when we were allowed to watch practice. So he just never made it onto the football field, never really was a part, battled some stuff. And then, when I woke up this morning after getting in at 3 a.m., kind of the tenor from the people over at Clemson was they were just more worried about the kid himself rather than this dismissal or taking shots at him or anything like that. It was, hey, we just hope that he gets, straight and can kind of put himself back on a straight path and focus up because he is a tremendous talent, Grayson. We've seen him. Unbelievable twitch. Kid's kind of got it all. A lot of speed. There was some, were they going to try him at running back? He wanted to play running back. Could he be wide receiver? A lot of talent. Hopefully he can get straight.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly a talent you and I've both seen. One of the best playmakers, I think, in the state recently that I've been able to witness with my own two eyes. So I think the hope is, and I think Clemson's hope is that things all work out for him in the end and just some things get processed on the other side of it. But we're going to quickly adjust and move forward. The other bit of news this morning, or this afternoon rather, but we'd been tracking for the last few days was Clemson's recruiting continues to have this upward trajectory, and it's with the commitment of a 4-star now Buford edge in Dre Quinn, who chose Clemson over Texas this afternoon. Something that's been profiled is that Texas, it felt like there were some rumors down over in the Lone Star State that the official visit had been the sort of the final nail in the coffin for the recruitment. It felt like that Quinn was eventually going to choose the Longhorns, but in comes Dabo Swinney, Chris Rumpf, and these Tigers to secure pledge number 19 for this recruitment class. The thing that immediately sticks out to me is not only the talent that Clemson's getting, and obviously pass rusher, you need a premier bit of those, especially when you're going to lose TJ Parker, Will Helt. You're going to have a sort of a vacuum at that position again. That's always sort of something we focused on in 2024, was that being sort of a spot that if you have a depth weakness or a deficiency, it's going to bite you. And so I think this commitment speaks a lot of volumes. Mostly, you're beating out Texas, which I think in many ways, not only are they a big player in the NIL world where everything's just a little bit bigger in Texas, guys, but also just their resurgence in that program, what they've been able to build the last couple of years. Clemson, for the large part of June, has been beating out big programs. Penn State, Michigan, Texas, the list goes on, and they have a chance to continue to do that. But David, Clemson's star power, this has been a reminder in this cycle. And so I think Clemson overall doing themselves a lot of positives on this recruiting trail.
Let's not forget Texas beat out Clemson for a punter a couple of weeks ago. So I guess Texas, you can have the punter Clemson will take the big time defensive end, even though Clemson does need to find a punter somewhere. Yeah, after his visit to Texas, and of course I'm out in Colorado, and you start hearing, man, it was the best visit he'd ever had, and people are like, "How do you feel about it?" And I'm like, "People, I'm out in Colorado. I don't know. I'm kind of trying to stay off the grid a little bit." But you get home, and it seems like it's really trending back in Clemson's favor. And of course, we all know, built along the lines, that's where you have to build. And look, let's not in this equation. And I'm not necessarily saying with Dre Quinn, but yeah, NIL is going to play a big part of it, and that's part of having somebody like a Kevin Kelly, who comes in and is about talent acquisition in the roster, having somebody like a Jordan Sorrells out there who can say, yeah, well, this is the guy that we really want. How much can we allocate for it? And then, of course, you have the recent House settlement. I remember texting someone kind of a couple of weeks ago and going, hey, you're already making plans. Are you worried that this may not get settled? And, I kind of got back a worried face emoticon. And it's like, yeah, this is a big deal. So now the House settlement is in place. They know what they can do starting July 1. And the recruiting keeps humming along. And, whether you like it or not, that's going to be a big part of it. From here on out, Clemson's going to be a player. They say nobody's going to, they're not going to lose guys unless it's just kind of stupid amounts of money out there. But they land Dre Quinn, another quick twitch guy. You look at him and he's strong on the hoof. And then Grayson, you and I were talking just a little bit ago, August 22nd could be a pretty big night. Friday night, I think we might head down to Buford, Georgia, and maybe eat at the varsity beforehand or something. Maybe we'll go to somewhere like that. But what happens on August 22nd?
Yeah, we got Clemson pledges potentially clashing. Well, we have at least two clashing, and one on July 4th will be making his decision. Maybe we'll have more insight on that later. So why not stay tuned to TigerNet for all that? But of course, we're going to have Benedictine Military College versus Buford on August 22nd, and it's going to be Cameron Cody, Dre Quinn, and Bryce Perry-Wright, who I've written about as one of the class-altering prospects and someone that has been tied to Clemson for quite some time. He commits on July 4th. He'll be choosing between a variety of schools, one of those being Texas, one of those being Clemson, but a couple other ones thrown into the mix. You had mentioned a note quickly about Kevin Kelly, and we haven't been able to really discuss this because after the Sweeney camp, you had flown off to go off the grid, and you had your sweet tea. I guess you were away from your true love of sweet tea, as you've written for our YouTube audience. His little bio says he loves sweet tea, but something that I don't think we wrote about enough, but something that you quickly picked up on, is how involved Kevin Kelly was with this and how this was really the first opportunity. I know we got to see him speak on the Two Right Turns podcast. They did a great job with that production there. But getting to see him up front and just sort of the evaluation of, obviously they're in the back of their minds, this 26 class is slowly but surely starting to come to form. Like the pillars are in place. I did a little bit of math earlier this week on how many players have came to campus or at least made it in that sense, because obviously that 2025 one, you had some bums in the road, but they averaged to about 20.8. So let's just say for 21 for round-up sake. So if you land Bryce Perry-Wright and Keyshawn Stansel, who Stansel took an official visit to Clemson last weekend, also think that's probably in the another ace in Clemson's deck. You got about 21 there. And so you start to round out those pieces. So the Sweeney camp was an opportunity to really start to push forward for 2027 and other future targets, 2028. But to see how involved he is, and he doesn't really, I think there's a way with presence with people where you can tell somebody's there, but he's sort of still in the background and not really, I think invasive may be the wrong word, but it felt like you could tell he was a part of the operation, but he was just away enough to where he was just kind of observing and then interjecting when he needs to be. Not like a Sweeney or a Riley, they're obviously going to be more hands-on, they're coaching, but you have Kelly, his hands are behind his back. It's sort of like an army soldier or something, just kind of waiting for his orders. And he just looked very much in command of the situation, very stoic. Before we get back to this video, we'd like to thank the title sponsor for this podcast, Newton, Scott, and Associates. This team is headlined by Jeff Scott, former Clemson assistant coach and two-time national champion, as well as Eric Newton, a longtime local and trusted real estate partner.
These two are teaming up to provide a first-class experience for all Clemson fans. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or build in the upstate area of South Carolina, you can trust Newton Scott and Associates. Choose the same team that Clemson coaches are selecting when they're looking to buy, sell, or build, all the way from Tigertown to Lake Keowee. For more information, you can find them at newtonscottsc.com or by calling the number 864-722-9062. That's 864-722-9062. Now, let's get back to the video.
Took a picture of what I called the process out there, where Riley was taking a look at the quarterbacks and Dabo had driven up on the golf cart. And then, kind of over in one group, you have Ty Clements, who's with recruiting, Zach Fulmer, who's, part of player personnel in one group, and Taj was there. And then in another group, you had Jordan Searles and Kevin Kelly, and they're kind of back waiting for the two coaches, the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach and head coach, to kind of make up their mind. But you could see everything that the quarterbacks were going through. Kevin Kelly very invested in it. And again, you just look, I know that head coaches, man, they are egotistical maniacs at times. That's what makes them great, right? You want to be hands-on. But some of the best head coaches hire really good guys and then let them do their job. And, of course, if you're Dabo Swinney, your job is getting a football team ready to play each week, putting your hands on recruiting. But that other stuff, I'm going to leave it up to these other guys, whether it's, hey, let's just say our roster, we're going to spend $18.5 million this year on it. Who gets what? I'm going to let other guys do it. And I'm just going to say, these are the guys that I want. I'm going to build a roster off of it. And of course, don't forget, speaking of that house settlement, rosters now can go to 105. So it'll be interesting to see how many walk-ons Clemson would prefer to maybe put on a scholarship. Some of the snappers, some of my favorite guys had a half last year. Will they each get a full? What will happen there? I was kind of teasing with them during the Swinney camp, asking if they had, done enough to earn a scholarship, just, laughing, stuff like that. So it's an interesting time in college football. And don't forget, hey, that new college football game drops if you pay money, like July 7th.
Yeah, so the early edition.
And then you will that morning, you will wake up, you will say goodbye to your brother McGregor, and you will not see him again until sometime probably early September. He'll come out of a bedroom, bloodshot eyes, long growth of beard, food all over his shirt, and he'll be like, man, that was great.
I mean, I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. He's got to start student teaching for his master's degree. Shout out to him, by the way. Really proud of him, but he's going to it's going to be a balancing act. He's going to be student teaching Monday through Friday and leading dynasties and winning national championships any other chance he can get. Let me tell you, he's unbelievable at the game, just as a little bit of a side note. And I'm excited to compete with him in another online dynasty for CFP 26. But there's a fun note with the games now is the way EA is going to reward schools who are played the most is that they'll basically receive an extra amount of money. So if you use, like, for example, Tulane or something, or BYU more than an Alabama or a Clemson, that BYU or Tulane's going to get a lot more money. And so maybe some program will see like an NIL resurrection because my brother decided to play the dynasty for 2 months. I don't know. That's going to be kind of interesting to be able to track. But just to circle back and put a little bow on this quick podcast, just a reaction to a lot of stuff. A Sweet Tea podcast. Shout out to Tyler and Chick-fil-A for all that. The sweet goodness that is Chick-fil-A. Man, I think, and I just want to add one more point before we wrap up, and something that was brought to my attention was with the way July 1 is sort of that crux where everything really feels like it's going to change. It feels like a lot of schools are ramping up their recruitment to try to get people committed and pledged before that date so you can sort of have them secure and not have to sort of worry about the financial aspect of it, because obviously those numbers are discussed now as part of the recruitment. I wonder how it all changes moving forward. I think it's going to be really fascinating. The approach is going to be different because now there's sort of a salary cap, I think, going into it initially. And so you have to sort of pick and choose. There's not going to be, it almost feels like Clemson's selective style almost works in a way where they've been selective before. So it's not like they're having to drop a guy here or there. They're going to want to bring him, and then they can be able to fit them into the picture. It's going to be so fast. We could talk about this for hours, I think, on another podcast just about this house settlement. We actually had a lot of requests for house settlement podcast. I think we'll have one out later once we get closer to that.
We probably need to do that. And I actually need more information on it. I've got somebody that I'm supposed to meet with and kind of go over some of that stuff here fairly soon. And maybe Jeff Callan over at Clemson can help me with that too. So, hey, it's what people call dark territory, but anymore it's not dark territory. That time between, the end of baseball season and the start of football season. And I think I might have this right. We could be as few as 26 days away from Dabo Swinney's media outing with Dabo
right.
and all of the coaches, depending on what Ross Taylor tells us. He said he kind of wanted it to be the week before the ACC kickoff. Regardless, we're now within 30-something days of the ACC football kickoff. And we're going to kind of go up in force for that. So it's almost here. And then, like I tell people all the time, I can now say the calendar's in June. We play football next month because there'll be some NFL exhibition game at some point next month where we're going to see football. And, it's always fun.
Yeah, we're going to have a ton of stuff. The NBA Finals probably will conclude tonight. This podcast will probably drop.
Are the Celtics in the NBA Finals?
They're all right. We're done here.
Are the Celtics?
All right, guys, thanks for listening to the Orange Crush podcast presented by Newton Scott and Associates in Chick-fil-A. As I wipe some tears from a Celtics-related comment, hopefully you are enjoying your evening with perhaps a chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A or maybe some of those delicious waffle fries. Who knows? Or sweet tea. Hood, would you like to show off your drink once again before your glorious sweet tea for our YouTube audience? If you're listening on Spotify, thank you. But for our YouTube audience, to get a little visual of David's scrumptious sweet tea. But guys, thank you as always for tuning into the Orange Crush podcast. Thank you for, if you stuck through this way, why not consider subscribing for more content like this? We're getting closer and closer to football season, and that means more content over on our ends. Guys, thank you. God bless y'all, and take care.